Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins. This topic is globalization, what it means and how it relates to the study of religion. The place to start is, what is globalization? So if this is something that you're doing as a school activity, pause. Treat it like school. This is something I would do in class, and I would have my students come up with definitions. Let's talk about it and try to decide as a class, what do we think globalization is? What's our understanding of that term? And then I would go into a more textbooky type definition. The textbookiest definition that I can give you is the process by which different parts of the world become interconnected, sometimes interdependent. This can be an economic thing. It can also be a social thing or a cultural thing. We're becoming so much more connected. Coronavirus has shown how connected we are, that a disease that started in Wuhan, China has made its way to San Antonio, Texas somehow. How does that happen? Well, because we're more connected now than ever before. It didn't get transmitted digitally, of course, but because we have airplanes and global travel, it's something that we see in our everyday life. It doesn't have to be something like a pandemic. It can be something like a t-shirt. The cotton in your t-shirt, like look at what it says on the tag. The cotton might have come from India, and it might have been processed and dyed in Thailand, and then from there it might have been shipped to Mexico to get screen printed, and then from there it got shipped up to the store you bought it from. That's 3 countries involved just to get you a t-shirt. So economically, that's one aspect of globalization. And I really encourage you to, there's a video that I'll put a link to called iPencil that really shows and illustrates the whole idea really nicely. It's a really cool video and it's very informative. So that's the economic side. I'm going to put a link to this video from Explainity as well, which kind of does a little bit more of a textbook type definition. But economically, we can leave that aside because we're not really talking about that in the context of religion. I'll talk more about it religious-wise in a little bit. But let's continue with just understanding what it is. So there's social and cultural aspects of globalization as well. So economically, there's positives and negatives that can be discussed. You know, for instance, positives, we have access to all these great, cool things from all over the world, and they can be bought really affordably. Some of the negatives might be economically. Perhaps the company that is doing the work is using labor that they're not paying well, or maybe they're using little kids to do the work. Looking at you, Nike. So that wasn't, I don't have coronavirus. I wasn't coughing because I'm sick. So positives, negatives economically. Positives, negatives socially. Well, positives, it's really cool to learn about other cultures. It's really cool to see the ways that people live and to do some of the things that other people do, to eat some of the food that they eat. It's really, really cool just to experience something different. We all have our own little fishbowl, and it's important to get out of our fishbowl every once in a while. And I'll talk more about that when I get to the culture aspect. But nice thing about globalization is we get exposed to things that we never would have seen or learned about even a generation ago. Some of the negatives socially are we get also exposed to some of the bad things. We see the ways that other people live that maybe we disagree with because they're making active social, cultural choices. Or maybe it's just something that we recognize as a problem, like we realize they don't have clean water or they're dying of diseases or something. So there are negative social and or cultural aspects to it. So that's something we could discuss as a class when we're in school. Don't have time. It's only a 15-minute video here. I'm going to move my little face up over here. So this illustrates some of the problems with globalization that, and something that whenever I would travel with my students, I would really try to encourage them not to participate in stuff in another country that they can do at home. So if you can go to the mall and eat at Subway and shop at H&M, why in the world would you do that when you're in Paris or Venice or whatever? Shop something Parisian or Venetian or whatever. So the interesting thing, though, is when you're in another country, like if you go to India, they have McDonald's in India. But what's the big thing about McDonald's is the Big Mac, and that's a big beef patty. And what would be a problem with having a beef burger in India? Cows are sacred to Hindus. So you're not going to find a Big Mac like we have in India. So maybe you eat at McDonald's just so you can see, like, what do they put in it? How do you make a Big Mac without beef? But this really also highlights one of the negatives in the exporting of a dominant culture. So the United States, we are the dominant country in the world, and therefore we have a lot of economic power, and so we can export our ways of doing things to other places, which sometimes is good if it involves things like treating people humanely and not hurting other people. It can sometimes be bad because maybe the the big, McDonald's or whatever, the big corporate entities run out smaller businesses, and the people that live in those countries now lose some of their local distinct culture, and it's being replaced with just like a copy and paste culture. So it's a pretty cool image, and something really to think about is there are good things about it. There are good things about globalization, and there's also some challenges. It's important to think about how globalization affects your life. I already mentioned your t-shirt. You might pause now and think about what are the different ways. Like, just look around you in the room and try to identify all the different ways that the world is in your room or wherever you're watching this. And if you're watching it on a device, the world is in your hand. And that's something that it frustrates me a lot, especially as a teacher, that people have the sum total of all human knowledge in the entire world in their hands, and they don't use it. It's so taken for granted. And there's so many ignorant people and people saying stupid things that are easy to figure out because we have all the combined knowledge of all of human history from the entire world a couple of taps away. So that's how it affects our life, is we have information freely available. But now what does it have to do with religion is the thing? Well, since we have all of this information available to us, sometimes we learn about other cultures and other places that do things differently. I just mentioned beef is sacred to Hindus. Well, what the heck? Did you know that? And if you didn't know that, well, why is beef sacred to Hindus? Well, globalization enlightens us and shows us the ways that people live in a way that then we can look into it and try to understand it better. Maybe we can try to learn from them or try to teach them maybe a better way of doing things. But when it comes to religion, we're learning from them, and it's a cultural thing. We're learning. We're just having a more vibrant, rich life. Whether you believe what they believe or not is kind of irrelevant. It's just really interesting to learn about why people do the things that they do, and globalization is what exposes us to that. Here's some of the impacts. Food. I mean, look down the street. You got food from Italy, China, Thailand. All over, you got food, Mediterranean food, you got all kinds of stuff. Music, we have, Eric Clapton's one of my favorite, he's one of my top 3 guitar players. Eric Clapton's British. The Beatles, one of the largest bands ever. Actually, let's list a lot of the bands. The Beatles, not American. Rolling Stones, not American. Led Zeppelin, not American. That's some of my favorites. Of course, they were all influenced by an American. Buddy Holly is kind of the godfather of all of that. That's why the Beatles, by the way, the Beatles called themselves the Beatles because of Buddy Holly and the Crickets. They wanted to be, they got their start playing Buddy Holly songs. So in a way, America still is responsible for the Beatles, even though they didn't come from here. That's at a total aside, though. Movies. This movie Parasite won American filmmaking awards. Slumdog Millionaire. What's really cool about this is it has, I think it was a British director filming a movie in India that was popular in the United States. Like, that is a great example of globalization there. Clothing or fashion. I'm not big into fashion. I don't really care. Obviously, this is what I'm wearing. This is my work outfit during my work outfit during the quarantine thing here. But lots of people do care about fashion. It's something that's interesting to people. And Louis Vuitton, that's French. You've got Gucci and Prada. Those are like European global companies. So these are just some of the ways that we are connected, and a lot of that deals with economics. We go back to the religion, just to circle back around. Some of you in the Zoom meetings, you're hearing that a lot. Let's circle back. Was laughing with my siblings about that last night. So, with religion, if you live in a country like, for instance, Iran or Saudi Arabia that have one state official religion, globalization can be a very important thing because you might not know about other religions and therefore other people's cultures, because that's the thing. Religion is so intimately tied with people's culture. It decides what holidays you celebrate. It might decide what, before I eat, I say a blessing over the food. That's a cultural religious thing. So your religion dictates a lot of times the way you live your life. And if you have a country that doesn't have exposure or access to other ideas, you have I don't want to say a monochrome view of the world, but you have it is a limited view of the world because you're literally not being exposed to other information. So globalization as it pertains to religion is an important thing. Number one, so that people can learn more about others and understand people better. Number one, learning, education is the most important thing. But number two, so that are you're spreading the ideas as well. Not just that you're getting ideas, but you're giving ideas too. So that in one place, something that might be held as a fundamental right, a human right, might not be the case somewhere else. And so in the United States, we don't really like it when people are executed for speaking their mind about, what I'm saying here. We don't have blasphemy laws. Some countries do. Maybe they need to learn from us, because it's okay for people to have ideas and speak those ideas. Not that we should enforce it, not that we should export and impose, but if it works for us, why wouldn't we want it for someone else? That's kind of my John Banky personal thing on that, is if it's good enough for us, why not for other people? If it's something that I want for me, why wouldn't I want it for other people? Not like I'm going to force them to have it, but I certainly will try. If you don't agree with that, then don't ever tell me about the fabulous new restaurant you ate at or this amazing movie you just saw. Shut up, because I'm not actively seeking it, and you're imposing what you think is good on me, right? No, really. You're sharing something you care about, and it's important to you. So globalization is a way we can share something that's important. So that's one of my little rants, by the way. Mr. Banky had a little bit of a reputation for going off on tangents and talking about things. That was one of such tangents. With that, the next thing that I'll be talking about is culture. I was talking about all this importing and exporting of ideas. Well, that's when we put our ideas into practice in a society. That's culture. So I'll do that next.